Ever wonder how to use one of these things? This thing's called a transit or a builder's level. In this video, we're going to show you how to use one of these things to build a level urban swale so that it infiltrates water correctly. If you haven't checked out video 1 and video 2 on urban swales, make sure you check them out first. I was trying to summarize permaculture design into like 3 statements, and if you had to do that, one of them would be levels. So understanding how water moves through a landscape. And so this is one of the most important tools that we use to figure out what our levels are, because it can do multiple things. So number 1, we can level a site. Number 2, we can determine the contours of a site, so we can understand how the landform looks, how water moves through the site. And then number 3, we can actually set slopes or keep things level. And so it's a really important instrument. The instrument itself has a crosshair. Actually, it has 3 crosshairs in here. So there's a vertical crosshair to line the ruler up vertically. There's a mid crosshair, that's your elevation. There's a top crosshair and there's a bottom crosshair. The middle one tells you elevation. So we'll set this staff in the actual swale itself, and we can go through the entire swale and make sure that every point in that swale is at the exact same level. The reason we want to do that is so that when water cascades into this system, we want the water to be pacified. So whenever you have water that moves on a slope, it picks up speed. So number 1, we don't want the water sloshing back and forth in this system. But number 2, we want to think about this as a bathtub. When you fill your bathtub up, you put a plug into it, the whole bathtub fills up simultaneously. It doesn't all flow to one end and fill up and then overflow into the other end, right? And so we can spread the water out throughout this entire system passively, which gives our plants water right where the roots actually want it. Okay, instead of doing the top irrigation. So when we top irrigate, especially at the beginning of the season, what happens to our plants is they actually start to move their roots diagonally or laterally, and so you end up with a garden that is addicted to water. And that's really why we're trying to get our water nice and deep. There's very little evaporation down here. Basically, when you're looking at this garden, yes, there's vegetables growing here and things, but this is actually just a massive rainwater harvesting system. We've got lots and lots of water being stored in here. So, you know, back here we've got 3,000 liters, we've got 1,000 liters in the back, 1,000 liters in the front. Those are small in comparison to what the soil actually holds. So basically what we're going to do, Chad's going to just take a look through there, and we're going to find our lowest point in the swale, and we're going to take a few shots. Once we have our lowest point, that's going to be the point that we're going to bring the rest of the swale to. The thing to always remember when you're working, especially on that end of the transit, is that the deeper the ocean, the lower the elevation. Okay? So as this goes further down into the ground, the number gets bigger. Okay? As it goes further up, the number gets smaller. Okay? You just have to really remember that. It can be a bit counterintuitive when you're using it. So we're going to take a few point shots and figure out what our lowest point is. Generally, these swales, these garden swales, we dig them about 8 to 12 inches deep. You don't really want to go any deeper than that. We're basically just going deep enough so that we can embed a weeping tile in here and then have enough overburden of mulch on top of it so the weeping tile doesn't come out. When we're working in the broadacre, these swales look quite different. They're going to have very, very gradual slopes on each side so we don't get any erosion, and they're not going to have anything in them. They're not going to have mulch, they're not going to have weeping tiles. This is just an adaptation for the urban environment. And what I've seen people do with these swales sometimes is they'll take a property that's got a mild slope to it, and they'll try and connect one end of a swale to the other and ignore the slope. And so you can imagine if you've got a property where you've got a 4 or 5 inch elevation drop from one end of the garden to the other, and you're trying to go down 12 inches, one end of your swale might end up being 17 inches deep and the other one might only be 12 inches deep. That's a disaster. So if you've got a big elevation drop, then you have to create a series of gardens with different swales at different elevations and then connect them using spillways like we've done here. Imagine, and just to put that into perspective, imagine if I wanted to have that swale to the same depth as this one. so that I could connect the two together. It'd be a disaster. Exactly, we'd be digging forever. And so it's better for us to create one tier there, and that overflows into the lower tier down here. All right, so we'll find that, what was the last elevation? 21.2 instead of 21.7. Okay. Did you say 22.7 was the first one? 22. Okay, that's deeper still. So we might choose 22 as the number, as long as that transit doesn't move. Fill some places and cut others in order to come to an even elevation. One of the questions or comments that I get all the time from people, and it's kind of confusing with swales, is I'll have people coming to me saying, well, my swales don't hold any water. It's like, awesome. They're not ponds. They're infiltration devices. They're meant to put moisture back into the soil. Or I'll get other people saying, my swales will hold water for, in fact, if your swales hold water too long, it can be problematic in a sense. We want to try and put the right amount of water in there so that it infiltrates within a 24-hour period of time. And the main reason is we don't want standing water for all sorts of reasons like mosquitoes and stuff like that. Generally speaking though, I mean, I've been here for 5 years. We've had some massive, massive storms coming off of this roof. And when you look at the volume of soil we're using here to absorb that water, we've never had any issues. So the rule of thumb when you're designing a swale, if you want to get into the calculations, is you'll figure out what your largest 24-hour storm event's going to be. Then you figure out what the infiltration capacity of your soil is by doing an infiltration test. Once you've got your infiltration test, then you can actually figure out the volume of your swale, how much that swale is going to actually hold, based on the loading rate that comes from the infiltration test. All right, so there's tables that you can follow for all of that. Basically, you just need to know to do an infiltration test, look at a loading rate. The loading rate will give you a volume per square meter, essentially, of surface area. And then that will relate back to a specific volume to go into your swale system. So I can show you guys that table a little bit later if you're interested. Okay, are there any questions?
Knowing how to use these instruments is super important to the permaculture design process. It ensures that we build proper contour maps, which gives us information about how water moves through a landscape so that we can harvest it correctly. Properly harvested rainwater ensures that we build soil quickly and that we have prolific and healthy plants. If you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave your comments below, and check out vergepermaculture.ca.